Albums, 36 years. Fleetwood Mac, this band might actually take in the...
You think so?
Public might actually like them. They're back in the middle of a 40-city tour. Got a new album out called Say You Will, which is selling very nicely, getting some great reviews, and we'd like to welcome to Good Day Live right now.
The boys!
We'd like to welcome, there are the boys, Mick Fleetwood, Lindsey Buckingham. How are you guys? Good. Where are you?
We're in Los Angeles.
Are you right here?
Well, what, you know?
Probably down the hallway.
Probably in our studio somewhere.
Right down the hallway.
Lindsey, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Can we lose the music so we can hear these guys? Didn't at one point every household owned Rumors or something like that? Did you hear that?
I think it was a law.
I think I played that 73 million times.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys, I just finished reading the Hillary book, and I'm just showing off to say I actually finished reading the Hillary book.
Yeah.
But in the last couple of pages, there's a really nice story about you guys. How it was maybe their last day or one of their very last days at the White House, and you guys did a surprise concert for their staff.
That's right.
Didn't know it was in the book, but that's absolutely true, yeah.
You want to tell us about it a little bit?
Yeah, but just sort of... the First Lady made the phone call, and it was all a surprise thing, which I'm told it actually was a surprise for the president, the then president, and we were able to say yes, you know, in terms of our scheduling and so forth, and we literally turned up at fairly short notice and did about an hour's worth or so of music on the White House lawn in a marquee tent, and it was great. It was more of a family thing in terms of not so much dignitaries. It was more for all the folks who work at the White House and in his close quarters in terms of people around him.
Are you amazed? Are you amazed that so many years later you guys are back on tour, back as a group? Almost all of you you're there. This is the music business. Things come and go. Is it shocking to you that you're sitting there together?
I think it's an interesting story to be had there, which we don't have time to go into, which a lot of people, including yourselves, may know some of the anecdotes.
Well, wait, are we allowed to ask you guys personal questions?
How we are sitting in these chairs talking to you. It's been one hell of a ride, and I think it's a testimony to something that finally for us makes a lot more sense than it actually did many years ago. So it's a sort of a happy situation we find ourselves in creatively, and you know, in terms of going out and working on the road, it's all actually making sense, whereas for many years there were loads of things that didn't make any sense. The music made sense, a lot of other stuff didn't.
The 60s, for one thing. Fleetwood Mac was together in the 60s, correct? I mean, the original.
We were, 67,
67, right? And then Christine McVie joined from her group called Chicken Shack, which I know, because I was...
you know your stuff.
I used to be in a Fleetwood band cover group. I'm not kidding you, back up in Canada. That's another story. But
wow,
so,
that is another story.
Yeah, don't even start me on that. But I used to do Oh Daddy. So you guys now, so the 70s roll around and you've got Lindsey and Stevie join. What decade, 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s, to you stood out for Fleetwood? Obviously the 70s, because, you know, Rumors, but what stood out?
Boy, definitely the 70s.
And now?
Yeah, I mean, the 70s were, we were very visible, but we were a phenomenon at that time, and yet part of the phenomenon was not really about the music. It was about, you know, bringing out the voyeur in everyone, I think.
Right. Everyone wanted to know if you were with Stevie or Stevie was with Mick. Exactly. And remember the time, backstage at a concert, Don Henley sent flowers to Stevie. Do you remember that? And it was like a big to-do. Everyone wanted to know if you were with Stevie at the time.
Well, I can't say I remember that specifically, but that would have been small potatoes in my book. You know? You know, well, I mean, we had a lot of rather dramatic happenings going on, and you know, that was it made it difficult to really appreciate what was going on. And I think on some level it made it difficult for the audience to appreciate the music for the music.
Oh, really?
And
Do you think? I think it added. As a listener, I just remember I was 11 in 76.
so was I.
and really, I remember thinking, my brother was 10 years older, so he was listening to Fleetwood Mac, and it was the big talk. The music was so incredible. And the background story of you guys, the drugs, the are you together, are you not, just made it even more, to me, compelling.
Well, yeah, sure, it provided a mystique and it provided a life, but, you know, in terms of really listening to the music, and for us as people, it created a kind of ambivalence and a kind of lack of clarity. It certainly made it very difficult to appreciate each other. And that may be what is significant about what we're doing now. I think in many ways, you know, you asked about us still doing this after all this time. I mean, I think we still have something to say. We still have something to prove in a way. I think in many ways the maturity that we have to offer now is allowing us to do on a musical level, certainly not in terms of the mythology, but the best work of our lives. And I think there's sort of a sense that we are able to maybe break the cliche a little bit that, you know, rockers either tap out or burn out by the time they're 40, because clearly that's not what we're doing.
Lindsey, thank you. Mick, thank you. We're going to lose our satellite here, so we've got to go.
Oh, we want to just say we're losing it.
Yeah.
It's not them angry at us.
Guys,
Just pull the plug.
thank you very much. Continued success.
It's because I didn't get to ask them my question about has any other band have so many members?
Yeah.
Sleeping together?
Yeah.
Please, of course they do. It's rock and roll.
No, I'm saying I think in the history of all bands, they probably hold the record for the most members.
You think?
Oh, members
no,
as opposed to
come on.
groupies, roadies,
Hello?
No, just inter-band relations.
No, not anymore. Are you kidding? By today's time.
You know what? If they
Remember that song,
talks about their mythology, all you got to do is tell them, what are the shows after the music? Come on.
Behind the music.
What's the other one?
Driven.
It seems to me every weekend you can get a Fleetwood Mac hour somewhere about all these interrelationships.
I have a book at home. I think it's still in Canada, but it's the whole history of Fleetwood Mac. So it's like from the 60s, 70s, and you know what he said? I wanted to talk to him about that. I wondered if he enjoyed it at all in the 70s, or if they blinked and all of a sudden it was 1980. And now they're older, so because you appreciate things, not in your youth, but later.
I think that's what Lindsey was saying.
Yeah.
That back in the old days, they were so caught up in their own soap opera of what was going on
And I
that they
actually
couldn't
wanted
just
to ask
enjoy what
why
was going
Christine
on.
McVie is not with the band now. But
She's done. She's quit, right?
She quit. Yeah.
yeah, but why?
That's another
I think
show.
she wanted a life.
Yeah.
I think she wanted a life outside of it.
Weren't they all
I think there's
living?
actually a more interesting story, but
Weren't
What
they,
did you
I'm
hear?
not going to get in trouble today.
Weren't they all living together in a house way back when? Remember that?
Yes, of course I do.
And it was all.
And it was,
Remember Christine
which
McVie?
room do you want to go to tonight? But they kind of alluded to that.
Okay.